Today I'm bringing you more than 30 different commander pairs that you could use in the open field in Rise of Kingdoms for KvK Season 2, and I'll give you the top 5. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I am going to review pairs that are totally legit to use in the open field for KvK Season 2. And I'm going to break this down as follows. First, I'm going to talk about the commanders that just aren't going to make the cut. You're not going to use them because I just don't think they're good enough. Then I'm going to talk about honorable mention pairings. These are pairs that they don't make the top 5, and I'm not going to do like a top 35 and pretend that I can rank them, but I'm going to give you all the honorable mentions, just a ton of pairs with commanders that I think are actually super viable in the open field in KvK Season 2. And then last but not least, I'm going to give you the dream top 5 pairs, ranks 1 through 5. And these are just individual open field pairings that I'm going to be providing. In a separate video, I'm going to talk about murder ball dynamics and the 5 marches you would bring together, both in a perfect world and also in a realistic world for new players that are just kind of leveling up in the game. So let's begin with the commanders that don't even make the cut. And rip these 3 commanders. They're not in a single pair I'm going to recommend today. That includes Julius Caesar. That includes Ragnar Shaggy Pants. That's Lodbrok. And last but not least is, of course, Freddy. Now, why am I not including these 3 commanders? First of all, they're gold key commanders, so you shouldn't be using universals on them anyways. Second of all, to have them to any decent progression by KvK2, you'd have to have used a ton of money buying gold keys, or you'd have to have migrated back. And if you migrated back, can't you do better? Wasn't that the point? There's a ton of other commanders that are better that we're going to talk about in this list. So these 3 commanders don't make the cut at all. A part of the reason that I don't like these 3 commanders is that, for example, Freddy and also, all 3 of them get kind of value over time with their active skill. And in general, combat might be so fast that like you fire off your active skill if you're lucky, and then you need to get as much value as you can up front. Because if you break combat after that, it doesn't matter that you had a buff for the next 4 seconds. You didn't get to use it. You see what I mean? So I don't like these commanders for open field, which brings me to commanders I do like. These are commanders and pairings that I like, but don't make the cut. And let's start with the Saladin pairings, baby. Because obviously Saladin is a fantastic commander. Also, obviously, I'm scrolling past him several times, and there he is. Saladin with either Minamoto, or Double C, or Mehmed, or Ethelfled is going to be absolutely fantastic. The Saladin primary is just a phenomenal commander because of cavalry tree and support tree. And the fact that cavalry move really fast, you can get out of bad situations, which most players need in KvK2. He's tanky, he's got punch. I really like every one of these combinations. I think the best of these Saladin combos would be Ethelfled, then Mehmed, CC, and last, actually, and least, is Minamoto for these particular pairings. Also, I think Saladin with Baibars is extremely reasonable. Baibars brings a lot of AoE. So there's a ton of value you could get from all of those pairs. A Saladin-led pair would be just a phenomenal choice to have a really great cavalry march. Now, the next runner-up here is going to be an Ethelfled-led march. And Ethelfled's fantastic, but this other commander, look, he's realistically easy to expertise, but Hannibal Barca, if you were spending money on him and you had him, you pair him with Ethelfled, and I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's amazing. I also think that with Ethelfled, you could pair Sun Tzu or Bjorn Ironside. All 3 of those pairs would be fine. This is KvK Season 2, everybody. I wouldn't recommend Barca as a commander that you invest in, but I do think that if you had him, you could use this combo, and you'd probably outclass a lot of people, even though he's not my favorite. The reality is that the spender that picks this commander up already probably has T5, and using these 2 together, the Ethel and the Barca, you can do some serious work. Barca does need to be the secondary. Now, the next set of pairs I want to talk about is Edward-based. All Edward-based pairs. Now, I don't like Edward of Woodstock because I think he loses a lot of value over time. But for this meta, in KvK Season 2, he's strong. He's strong because, well, he's one of the best commanders that's available in this grouping. But the thing I generally don't like about him is that he takes so long to fire off his active skill. By the time he does that, they may have just walked away and they skill cycle you first, which means you do less damage anyways with your active skill because you have less units. But if you were going to use Edward of Woodstock, I think Edward and Esong or Edward and Cid are certainly worthy of honorable mention pairings. On the topic of archers, El Cid and Esong is a fantastic archer pair. Going to get you a ton of value. You'll get hunted, but the reality is that it's still a good pair. Cid brings the march speed, instant proc damage. Esong brings the punch. The two together can do some serious work, even though you've got a equally serious target on your back. Next, I want to talk about more cavalry, and this is a cavalry commander I don't recommend people generally invest in, and that's Genghis Khan. And look, the thing about Khan is that he's great in PvE, player versus environment stuff, but because he's got no tankiness whatsoever, the second the enemy focuses him, he's going to get wrecked, and he can't run away because he hits a march speed debuff when he's in combat. Yikes. But if you are using Khan, you still can get some damage done in KvK Season 2, especially if you are a T5 player and everybody else is using T4. Use Khan with Double C or Mehmed or Minamoto to do just a ton of damage. The rage reduction over here is reasonable. The chance to sort of double strike with your active skill because of the expertise is super fierce. Yeah, I generally think that in this flavor of KvK, Khan with CC, Mina, or Mehmed actually can get stuff done. And again, you could use a buy bars for that AoE damage, which is also very, very reasonable. Now, the next set of pairs is going to be infantry-based, and it's either a primary commander, being Richard I, or Charles Martel, or Constantine. And the secondary commander in all of those cases is either going to be Joan of Arc, it's either going to be Mulan, or it's going to be Esong. The reason you use a Joan of Arc is to buff nearby marches. She is absolutely phenomenal. You're just hiding her behind the really tanky marches so you don't get focused out. I really like bringing Trajan. Well, if Trajan's good, Joan of Arc is also good. She's the KvK Season 2 equivalent for sure. Really fantastic commander. Esong, you're hiding behind these really tanky commanders so that you can do lots of AoE and perhaps go unnoticed. This is a very powerful way to sneak in a lot of damage in KvK Season 2 and will lose a lot of strength later on as you get more options in the Season of Conquest for better archer pairings that are plenty tanky and have plenty of punch. Now, the Mulan that I mentioned, of course, is absolutely spectacular. She would be very hard to have in a really fantastic state by KvK Season 2 unless you were migrating and unless you were spending. I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting universals into her. So I think she is a fantastic commander, but she's going to show up later on this list. So I'm going to hold off for talking about these Mulan combos, which are definitely very powerful. The remaining Richard, Constantine, or Charles primary combos that I want to talk about would be using an epic as a secondary. And that epic that you would bring would be either Sun Tzu or Bjorn Ironside. Both of those commanders are really phenomenal infantry commanders. The Bjorn has instant proc damage, which is very strong. Also makes the target take more skill damage, which is pretty good in this flavor of KvK. Even though there's a lot of non-skill damage commanders running around the field, I still respect it. Also, those same epics paired with an Alexander the Great primary. I mean, it doesn't make the top 5, but it's really good. It's very strong. Can recommend. I have used Alex Sun Tzu. It's great. Haven't used Alex Bjorn, but it's very similar. And the double instant proc damage, I mean, Alex has it, Bjorn has it. Woohoo! Yeah, you could do some fierce damage at the start of a combat. Just boom. Instant proc is really great. Last pair that I cover in the honorable mentions, before I get to the main event here, the top 5 list, is going to be pairing a couple epics together. Because, yes, Sun Tzu is good. Bjorn Ironside is good. Smash them together with a Bjorn primary to reduce to increase the skill damage that they're going to take, and then boom, you hit them with Sun Tzu. I think that's a great idea, great combo. Can recommend. I would consider something like that as I get taxed. my gathering speed goes up. It's worth it. So now we can actually talk about the top 5. And the number 5 in the list is a commander that I personally have great turmoil over and struggle with. And that is going to be the Edward and Tamaris combo. Look, Tamaris is really powerful. And Edward paired with Tamaris, well, they were designed for that. And I'm not saying it'll last till the Season of Conquest, but there's no denying that if somebody's got this in KvK Season 2, they could do a lot of damage. And although this is an open field guide, a Edward and Tamaris city rally is terrifying. I love this combo for KvK Season 2. I personally have used this combo later on and gotten wrecked. I debated whether or not to include it at all, but I think that the Edward-Tommy combo does deserve a spot in this top 5 list, which is why I've given it number 5. But number 4 on the list is a combo that's much more commonly used, and everybody should have access to this combo. It's an Ethelfled primary, and you probably aren't too surprised to hear me say that it's an Esong secondary. This combo is amazing in Canyon, but that utility doesn't stop there. You can use this in the open field, and it gives Esong a little bit of tankiness because of all of the skill damage taken reduction from the support tree. It also hides the Esong instead of having it be a primary commander. Yes, people will still target Ethel, but dude, it's KvK too. Like, there's going to be a ton of those running around. You're not going to be the only one with an Ethelfled primary in this flavor of KvK. Trust me on that, and I mean, we migrated back to showcase that with this account, so I'll be able to show you that. Up next is number 3 on the list, and I'm bringing Saladin back, baby. I started with him in the honorable mentions. Now I am mentioning the combo that is actually in the top list, and at number 3, Saladin Esong. You're hiding your Esong behind Saladin to do a ton of damage with AoE, and unlike all the other Esong pairs that have no way of escaping combat, Cavalry primary have ways for days. Not only does Saladin bring some of his own march speed from one of the skills, the talents allow you to get charge, so when you're below 50%, you get 30% more march speed. It's time to get out of dodge. The speed with which you're gaining rage is also super relevant for just doing tons of AoE damage. The support tree is very good for that. It reduces the skill damage you take. Saladin Esong is a worthy number 3 in this list. 10 out of 10, can recommend. And I've used that myself a long, long time ago. Ideally, when you get to Season of Conquest, you use a pure Cav commander pairing with your Cavs, like Saladin and William, and a pure Archer pairing in Season of Conquest, like Esong and Ramses, or really Ramses would be the primary. But for Season 2, this is a solid march, Saladin Esong. Up next is a top-tier march that I think doesn't last the test of time, but many people do still use it in Season of Conquest, and that's going to be Alexander the Great with Richard the First. And they just keep adding more and more ways to freaking counter healing, man. Let me tell you, Gilgamesh hit the game. Now there's just like yet another way to deal with healing. But I think the reality is that between the shields and the heals and the utility that this combo brings, it's pretty powerful. It's got a lot of staying power, and it's going to make it so the enemy does less damage. They are slowed. You are shielding with Alex. You are making it so that enemies take more damage because of the expertise on Alex. And I like it. The instant proc damage also gives you serious value. So you don't have to focus on getting skill cycles quite as much because your main damage dealer is actually instant proc. It gives you a lot of flexibility in how you approach different fights. You can use the Richard primary for more tankiness, the Alex primary for more punch. Between the two pairs, this is a great pair that is undeniable in KvK Season 2, and this will cover the field. The number 1 pairing, however, at this point, you're probably going to guess what I'm going to recommend. And I actually remember dueling with this combo way back in the day, and it was so powerful. I mean, I'll have a card up in the top. This was like ages and ages and ages ago. But Alexander the Great with Esong is just timeless, man. Well, maybe not timeless. It loses some value in Season of Conquest, and by some value, I mean that yet again, you'll find yourself in a situation where you want 2 dedicated infantry commanders and 2 dedicated archer commanders. But man, if you're bringing a small number of marches on the field and you want to have some punch, like I'm going to do, because I'm not going to have the resources I need to field fight as much as I would potentially want to field fight. Gold is going to be my limiting factor there, by the way. I can strongly recommend Alexander the Great and Esong as a pairing that works really well. The Esong needs march speed. Well, you bring all infantry, and Alexander the Great gives you 30% march speed. That's not so bad. The Esong gives you a lot of AoE damage and boosts skill damage dealt. Well, Alexander the Great does instant proc damage. So this march really has it all. It's got speed. It's got tons of utility. It's got a slight amount of staying power from the shields, and it's got damage. It's a versatile march. It's a powerful march. I can 10 out of 10 recommend and feel very comfortable with Alexander the Great and Esong as the #1 pair I would recommend for KvK Season 2. But what do you think of this list? And what commanders did I forget? What commanders should I have paired together? I think there are probably some really good options here. Like, I thought in my top list I had Constantine and Mulan, so maybe I should just double back on that and say, if you did have Mulan and you paired with Constantine, I think that's one of the top tier pairs. I don't think I would necessarily make that #6 in my list, but I could have swore for a time I had it in my top 5 list. I guess I removed it. The tankiness of Constantine and the buffs of Mulan, it's just a very powerful march. But if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and throw a like on here. And if you want to see when I follow this up with what do I think the best possible murder ball would be, that's 5 marches you would bring to the field. If you're either a player who migrated back with a bunch of commanders or a mega whale, and also if you want to see the 5 commander pairings I would do, if you're just entering Season 2 of KvK for the first time, like what would I think a reasonable set of 5 marches would be? I'll give you that list as well. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.